Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
You want me to solve all this tush-push and fourth down malarkey that goes on with the officials? Here's a crazy idea. Get rid of the worst rule in the NFL, and that is forward progress. How about this? Where I knock your ass on the ground is where the ball goes, period. Let's end this whole conversation. Like, if I drop you back 4 yards, then you lost 4 yards. If we get rid of forward progress, this tush-push and everything else is taken care of. Where I put your tail on the ground is where the ball goes, end of conversation. It's the dumbest rule and the most arbitrary rule. The only thing that is a worse call in the NFL than forward progress is the punt that goes out of bounds when you watch the official walk down the sideline having absolutely no clue where that ball crossed over. All I can think of is that Price is Right game go do-de-do-de-do, do-de-do-de-do, as he's walking down the sideline, arbitrarily trying to figure out where the ball crossed over because he's got no clue.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern.
A new week starts right here, right now, live on a Monday morning on the Early Line on SportsGrid and all across the SportsGrid network. That includes sportsgrid.com/watch, where you can find your favorite destination to consume everything all across the grid. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. We are here together for the next 3 hours up until 11 a.m. Eastern time on a Monday morning. That might be an extended holiday weekend for many of you. Happy day, if that's what we are saying, but a weekend, DRS, full of all-star and international festivities to look back on here to start off a new week on the Early Line. All-Star Weekend in the association out by the Bay in San Francisco with the new format of the All-Star Games last night. 4 teams, and then we go to the 4 nations face-off up in Montreal in what a game we had on Saturday between the United States and Canada. Our reactions to everything we saw throughout this weekend. Huge weekend of college basketball. Yesterday, exactly 4 weeks until Selection Sunday, so a ton to break down over these 3 hours up until 11 a.m. Eastern.
Should be a lot of fun here, and also hopefully everybody enjoyed their holiday weekend. For me, first Sunday off since August. It felt great to have a couple days off, get some good food in my body. Also realize that most Major League Baseball teams having their first or second full squad workouts beginning today, so spring training underway. College basketball heads down the backstretch. We still put to bed the NFL season, which again, the college football season combined, some of the best football we've ever watched all the way through. So it is an exciting time, even if it's real windy with snowstorms expected this week on the East Coast. Come on now. We got you covered here, bright and sunny, right here on the grid.
Enough of this cold weather, though, right? Under 4 weeks away from Selection Sunday. March Madness also feels like the unofficial tip-off to spring. We are hoping for warmer days ahead. How is the NBA feeling about its All-Star weekend in the new format of not the All-Star game, but perhaps the All-Star Games? We will give you our sweeping takeaways and reactions throughout the entirety of these 3 hours and hear from the people. But DRS, last night in the new rendition of the All-Star Game, of course, we had 4 teams, 2 semifinal matchups, and a championship game, everybody playing in a first to 40. The actual games themselves, they seem to swing a little bit more to the competitive side, which has been an issue with the NBA All-Star Game in years past. but the overall format, the broadcast, and the presentation left a lot of people scratching their heads. For the actual results, Team Shaq's OGs, goes home victorious with a big victory in that championship game against Team Chuck, 41-25, that featured a Stephen Curry drilled half-court shot, and in front of the home crowd in San Francisco, a Steph Curry All-Star Game MVP honor as well, the second in his career. DRS, that's the result of the All-Star Games. How did you feel about what you saw this weekend in San Francisco?
I felt pretty good because I didn't see one live minute of All-Star Weekend, the dunk competition, the three-point competition, the skills competition. I just followed on social media with the biggest smile on my face because I didn't see one person out there claim they actually liked what they saw. But you know what I give a lot of credit for as well? The skills challenge. I love when people try to cheat to win at that point because I've been preaching it since Michigan got it done. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. The NBA should have let that go through. The Spurs should have won. But if you remember, in my pick six, I guess it would be on Thursday of last week, I did have Team Cavs to win that skills competition. So, cha-ching, baby, let's go.
And we both looked at Mac McClung getting the job done in the dunk contest. Our guy, Norm Powell, did not. But a couple of winners that we gave you in the pick six on Friday to hopefully have at least a profitable All-Star weekend. I was all over Team C in the Rising Stars Challenge. They played on All-Star Sunday night. Germanary picked Tyler Hero to win the three-point contest despite a 3 for 14 day in his final game before the All-Star break from deep. So there you go. A three-peat DRS. What a run it has been for those exciting individuals. Mac McClung repeats for a third year in a row as the dunk contest champion, becoming just the second three-peat dunk contest winner since Nate Robinson did so in 2006, 09, and 2011 as well. All four dunks McClung had on All-Star Saturday night, perfect 50s.
Yeah, he's crazy. I mean, the dude's got hops. He's dunking over Kias. We all saw the highlights. You knew coming into it he would be the favorite, which means like the NBA. It is a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. Why can't he legitimately just be on a roster as the 15th guy to almost say this is legitimate at this point, where you don't have to bring up a G League? Like, what's going to happen in 1 or 2 years when nobody in the NBA wants to dunk? Is it just go to like the professional dunkers route, which we have no idea who they actually are, but they have crazy dunks at this point? I feel like Nostradamus, Ben, at this point, specifically with the dunk competition. Just take it away for a decade. We'll love it in 10 years. What is it, 2025, 2035, the dunk competition? We will be so excited for it at this point right now, because if we just need G Leaguers to come up when the superstars don't give a damn about it, why should we?
Yeah, I know the superstars don't care, but the actual action that we saw out of Mac McClung was pretty awesome on Saturday night. We'll have plenty more of our takeaways from the entirety of All-Star Weekend and where things stand. Now to actual basketball. Huge weekend of college hoops, including the first ever 1 versus 2 in the AP poll in men's basketball history within the SEC. In number 1, Auburn, proving they are the top team in the land for a reason. Road victory in Tuscaloosa over the Crimson Tide in a rivalry amplified 94-85. The Tigers win outright DRS as a short 1.5-point dog on the road. A lofty total of 174.5 skies over. But Auburn makes a statement on Saturday in Tuscaloosa.
Absolutely. And how about this? 6 players on the Auburn Tigers in double digits, 3 starters and 3 guys off the bench. When you have that type of continuity from your starters to the bench where you can reach down to get that many points from reserves, that is tremendous. 94 points on the road in the Iron Bowl of basketball. I was so impressed by Auburn. And we're not leaving Alabama out in the cold, the number 2 team in the nation. But boy, Auburn looked fantastic on Saturday.
19. And many marquee matchups on Sunday we'll react to in just a little bit. 4 nations face off, DRS. The game we were all waiting for Saturday night, and the United States up in Montreal beats Canada on home ice. 3-1 the victory.
Crazy for the U.S. beating their own 51st state, right in their own state at this point here, and it switches back to Boston. This is what we live for. That is passion between 2 nations going at it. A lot of hatred. Love to see it, though. I do.
And that's why the anthem was booed and fights happened very early on. The U.S. clinches a spot in the final William Byron, will he be? Repeats as the Daytona 500 champ. Cool. All-Star Weekend next.
At some point, these 80s are going to learn we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience who's gone out and recruited, who know how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams. Who's got the best goaltending? You're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
All-Star Weekend in the NBA out in San Francisco. And of course, this year, even more so than the actual results, was what we could expect from a change in format. 4 teams facing off on All-Star Sunday night. No longer just an All-Star game, but All-Star games. 3, in fact, 2 semifinal matchups and a championship tilt in San Francisco. Would the public be more bought in? Would the players be more incentivized to actually play what looks more like competitive basketball and not just glorified layup lines? Would we like the new format in the race to 40? Would we agree with everything in the inaugural year of this new decision and structure for NBA All-Star Sunday night? Donnie, that's a part of the conversation, and of course will be most of our reactions. We're not here to break down the critical moments of the games or the key matchups and X's and O's that we saw that ultimately ended up in a Shaq OG's championship, as led by Steph Curry and Jason Tatum in the championship game. Shaq's OGs take down Chuck's global stars. Steph Curry, in front of the home crowd by the Bay, wins the second All-Star Game MVP award of his career, capped off and crowned, if you will, by a half-court shot that he absolutely drilled midway through that championship game against Team Chuck. Team Shaq, who entered the weekend when we were breaking things down as the favorites to win the All-Star games, actually closed slightly behind Chuck's global stars. So maybe if you bet on Shaq's OGs, a plus 130 price does come through. But that's all a part of it, Donnie. The games themselves actually were kind of fun. They looked kind of competitive, but the presentation and how we feel watching it is almost more important than the actual game and result itself. So what did you recognize, DRS, from this change in format?
Like, let's get to the beginning of it, too, because, like, All-Star Weekend to me, again, in the NBA, and I feel like I've been the only one, like, 10, 15 years ago. We got to get rid of every All-Star game. It's just a waste of time. How about just complete the season? You have an All-Star dinner at the end of it. Hey, I got voted into as an All-Star. Great. You don't have to play anything. Just go have a nice steak dinner at Morton's, get the boys together, have a couple cognacs and cigars, and that'll be fine. But here's what I saw yesterday, which I thought was pretty funny. LeBron James knew damn well that he was never going to play in this All-Star game.
Yeah.
Strung it out, and then like an hour before you're supposed to get suited up, yeah, by the way, my ankle just never fired up. So your team was already down one superstar where you could have added another superstar, which could have helped. Again, they won the competition. That's all fine and good.
Right.
But you know what I got to laugh at it too? Let's just take this back and let's just say we are in preseason, right? Team picture time for the Los Angeles Lakers. And hear me out on this. But LeBron James has a sore calf and won't play in the first preseason game. Does LeBron James show up to the team picture in his street clothes where everybody else has on their Laker uniforms and everybody else has on like their coaching outfits? Did you see the team picture yesterday for the OGs where LeBron was in street clothes while the rest of the team was in a uniform? Like, he couldn't just put the uniform on and take like that class photo for the memory at that point. He had to be the only one in street clothes because he wasn't playing. And it wasn't because he was getting surgery or broke his leg. Like, he just wasn't playing because his ankle and foot was sore. I thought that was a hilarious start to the weekend at that point. But having said that, play out. Just looking at the All-Star games where we're trying things new. Look, if you're trying things new, it means it's absolutely broken and you're never going to find your way back. You take a look at Draymond Green starting off yesterday, which I love to watch, and I watched a lot of the pregame because all they were doing was torching the NBA left and right on the NBA broadcast, and I thought it was great. But they're right about this. The simple fix to everything on this weekend is get the stars to appear on Saturday night so the fans get excited and they have something to watch. Then on Sunday, isn't it simple? A pickup game that has a little bit more intensity than you normally would for an All-Star game. Picked, perfect, fantastic. We'll watch again. Ben, it's not that hard.
Yeah, NDRS, that's going to be a part of all of this, right? How can we fix it? Do we need to fix it? Are we trying to fix something that is really just okay? And because as we try to continue to make changes, we are getting further and further away from the actual plot. Draymond had a lot to say yesterday. Did not agree with the Rising Stars champions playing on Sunday night because he never played in the Rising Stars game, which led to Charles Barkley clapping back on the actual game broadcast, saying, Draymond, it's your generation that ruined the All-Star game and how much pride and respect we used to put, my generation used to put into that game. So you had two guys that are anchors of NBA coverage and content going back and forth on the actual broadcast. And then the presentation itself. Don't take it from Donnie, me, your neighbor, your buddy, whoever it might be. Take it from the players who were not thrilled last night with the stoppages in play, either during the games that featured like Mr. Beast and Kevin Hart doing a half-assed stand-up set, or a tribute to the NBA on TNT during the broadcast on TNT that had their hosts being the captains of these teams that were like 20 minutes long, delaying the championship game. The presentation of it all, Donnie, was absurd and ridiculous. And if they're trying to make it exciting from that perspective, they are so far out in left field. The actual games themselves, as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander said, hey, it's on the players to make it competitive. I thought it kind of was, at least compared to what it used to be. The games were fine. The race to 40 was fun. You saw a little bit more defense than we've ever seen the last 5 years in the All-Star game. The presentation of Sunday night was awful.
Like, and I heard, because again, I didn't watch the games itself live, but most of the criticism was, we're just getting into a flow. Why are we stopping for 20 minutes at this point? Because the NBA was like, well, we have a show and we have a window, so we have to extend it just in case these games finish earlier, which is completely against what the fans want. Like, can you imagine? Like, I understand there's halftime in an NFL game and halftime in an NBA game. We get that that's supposed to be in there. But when you get into a flow, taking 20 minutes off for something that's out of whack, and also it would have been more fun if the TNT crew, where they kept showing and, you know, the highlights and wishing them well, was every highlight was like how much they think that the NBA game stinks overall. Like, that would have probably been even better as a montage to show at that point. But I just don't like so many changes. It's a simple fix, as we always like to talk about it. Just have the superstars care a little bit more, and we'll watch. Like, I think Major League Baseball, like, you don't see a pitcher go out there who throws 98, throwing 68 because he thinks it's funny. It's somewhat still a semblance of a game. As long as you have that, people will tune in and enjoy it. But if you don't, just do away with it. We don't need All-Star Weekend and a complete week break from the regular season. Just keep playing the games then.
We're also not all that far away from when the All-Star game was just fun and it was kind of basketball. We'll discuss more next.
Slow play drum beat grows louder and louder every week, to the point now that they're making overt references to it on the broadcast.
So there's plenty of other guys that have to get faster. Tom definitely is more deliberate in his conversations, always has been since he's been on tour. I just think about Joe Scarver when those two started working together, how their conversations always seem to just keep on going and going.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
At some point, these 80s are going to learn we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience who's gone out and recruited, who know how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams. Who's got the best goaltending? You're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
20-34. They are 14 games below 500. Any given night, you have no idea who is going to play for Philadelphia. Embiid has missed so many more games than he has actually played this year.
I will not bet on the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. I will not bet on the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. I will not bet on the Ravens because for the last 4 years now, I do it every year, and I want to hit myself in the head with a bat.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
So our continued reactions to All-Star Weekend, and namely All-Star Sunday Night, the All-Star Games, and a change of format for the first time here in 2025. Again, the result, the OGs, making sure everybody knows they still got it. Team Shaq victorious, 41-25 in the final as a slight dog against Chuck's Global Stars. And for a second time in his NBA career, twice now in the last 4 seasons, Steph Curry goes home an All-Star Game MVP award winner. This time in front of the home crowd in San Francisco, inside the Chase Center, that saw him even drill legitimately a half-court shot midway through that championship game. Perhaps a crowning moment. Those are the stats for Steph in his 2 games, as Shaq had the benefit of an easier draw, perhaps taking on the Rising Stars champs in the opening game in their semifinal matchup. So, DRS, we're not going to react to legacy for Steph Curry now with his second All-Star Game MVP award. But Steph himself was pretty vocal about the changes that needed to happen to All-Star Weekend. And he even said after the game, he had spent a lot of time in the last year or so discussing with NBA Commissioner Adam Silver how to make this product better. Again, I don't think the actual games were bad, at least based on the structure of what we have seen. The presentation and the interruptions and the weird broadcast nature of what we had seen throughout All-Star Sunday night, that's what left the fan being like, what am I watching? What have they done to the game I've loved?
Yeah, and that's the problem with it here. People tune in. Yes, you understand you're going to get a show, but then it used to be, it was like, well, I understand when I tune in at 8 o'clock, we're not going to tip off till 9 because we're going to have dance routines, we're going to have performers, we're going to have immense starting lineups that need to be announced on both sides. Then the game gets underway. It's a lot of dunks. It's a lot of fun, and whoever wins. And then the game's sort of getting out of reach where nobody played any defense, and we understood that. But if you're going to say, hey, look, we're going to put a new wave of entertainment in here, these guys are going to play hard. When basketball players and athletes get locked in, they don't want breaks. We understand that there's a halftime. Okay, one game finished. There's a 16-minute break before the next game. We understand that. You can play the montages. But from what I was hearing there, and correct me if I'm wrong, these montages were taking place during the game and then breaks after the game and more breaks in the middle of the game. Nobody wanted that. You just wanted to lock in and play and get after it at that point. So I like that they tried to change it. And I do think the format was better than what we were getting. But at the same time, they have a lot to learn on what the fans actually want to watch. And we'll see when we get some of the numbers come out for the All-Star game and actual ratings themselves for All-Star weekend for the tweaks. But again, it's just a simple fix. If you brought this same structure back next year, cut out all the filter and just have these guys play hard, I think people actually would enjoy that because
viewer on a Sunday night of a holiday weekend, I don't even think they were watching oh, cool. I don't even think they cared. And certainly the basketball fan, the NBA aficionado did not care and often probably leaned the other way of what am I doing? What am I even watching? So, Donnie, I think it really comes down to this. Are we going to see another change? This was the first year of it. Anytime there is the first year of something, it's our initial takeaways, and then we think, is it going to continue? I think with what we have seen in the Four Nations face-off, there was the natural idea of being ooh, what if we made it some international and national pride? The United States versus the world in an all-star game with all of the international talent we have seen in the NBA. Would that work? Would that make things more compelling? There's the idea of making players cough up their own money. That's never going to happen. So, Donnie, do you think the NBA is going to change the format again? Or do you think they just change the broadcast/product but focus on this format of the race to 40, the semifinal and championship matchups?
No, I think that you have to be proactive if you're a pro sports league, and what your fans clamor for, you want to give them. And again, just get betting to, hey, if it's East versus West, you play harder. That's really all they want. Dunk competition, superstars, that's all they want. 3-point competition, all the superstars show up and have fun with that. But if we're not going to get that, yes, the fans say, look at what hockey is doing. Now, granted, you're not going to get fights. You're not going to get that much envy. But at the same time, there are other countries around the world where they don't have to be NBA All-Stars. Show up at All-Star Weekend. When you have national pride on the line, players will play harder, specifically the overseas guys, which then in turn will fire up the United States guys as well. It's an easy fix, Ben. It is.
So we'll talk about that more next and All-Star Saturday night as well.
At some point, these 80s are going to learn we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience who's gone out and recruited, who know how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams, who's got the best goaltending? You're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
So will there be another change to the NBA All-Star Game/games? Should there be? And if so, what would it be? Donnie, we are discussing kind of in comparison to what we are seeing before our eyes in the Four Nations face-off, an idea that some think would incentivize players to have some national and international pride for the NBA All-Star Game. The United States versus the world. If you want to go 4 teams, maybe a variety of countries, the U.S., Canada, France, Serbia, as we're about to see a documentary of sorts play out. Are there all-stars that could hit all of that? That's not necessarily what the NHL is doing right now. It's not all-star selections that are deemed throughout each team. You could still get the honor of being crowned an all-star for your achievements throughout the regular season, and we change the festivities of an all-star break. Do you think it would actually work, DRS? Do you think it would incentivize those basketball players? Do you think the NBA would ever consider such a change?
They should. And again, if you're just changing it for the sake of change, then probably it's not going to work. But you just want to add a level of intrigue that the fans and the players will buy into at the same time, which it's not All-Star game day, right? It's All-Star weekend for a reason. Like the normal flow is like, hey, the celebrity game on a Friday night, the Rising Stars, couples challenges, the dunk competition, the 3-point challenge. And then you got the Sunday when the actual All-Stars started to play. But a few years ago, we sort of broke that mold where it was like, boy, All-Star Saturday night used to be the place to be with Vince Carter absolutely putting on shows 20 to 25 years ago. And it turned into, who is this guy and why am I watching him dunk? Is he even an NBA player when Mac McClung, who was fantastic, is not technically an NBA player? So if you just change and put the flags on the court here, those guys will ramp it up because as much as you want, like let's just say for Team USA per se, it's boring, we don't like this. And Slovenia is cooking them. That's a terrible look there for the future of the United States. Hey, look, I thought we were the best. Same way you go to the Olympics, like we need to reassert our dominance. No more college kids. We're sending the pros here to show who really controls world basketball power. You would get a mini tournament like that. The mini tournament would be so much about the international guys really ramping up and taking that pride. It happens all the time. Like take a look at even the international hockey series that they have. Forget about what we're seeing in the Four Nations. But some of those guys, if you ask them with true serum, would you rather win a Stanley Cup for, let's just say, Russia and or France or whoever else is competing, Germany, they actually say, you know what? I'd rather have the national pride and win this as opposed to a Stanley Cup, which is manufactured just for the United States and Canada and the NHL themselves. I think if you add that back in, the intrigue, that's all we're asking for. Give me a reason to tune in. That's all.
Yeah, it's the incentive for the players. It's the incentive for the fan to be like, this is a marquee thing.
Yeah.
And Donnie, one of the reasons we're making this comparison right now, the international effect, is because of what we are seeing directly in front of our eyes in the Four Nations face-off. Saturday's tilt in Montreal between the United States and Canada drew 4.4 million viewers, the highest-rated non-Stanley Cup final hockey broadcast in the last 5 years for an all-star exhibition, but with so much international pride. Booing of an anthem, fights multiple in the opening few minutes since the puck was dropped. That's what sports fans actually want to see. But I also think, Donnie, just as we make our final point on the changes to the All-Star game, I'm not sure we're going to get the United States versus the world. Whether with the All-Stars having a U.S. and international team, I'm not sure we're going to see another change in format because I actually think the games worked last night. The product as a televised event was a little bit different, but I think that can be changed. Donnie, I think we're also getting to a stage where all-star games in a variety of sports just aren't what they once were. And that's okay. just a change in format. In the 80s and 90s, all-star games meant everything. It was the only time that the public at large could see all of these superstars around the country get together. You can see a superstar in a minute when you open your phone and go to whatever social media site that you want to be a part of. And then we see what's happening in the NFL. Our producer, Joe Frizo, during a commercial conversation, made a great point. Oh, these guys don't care. Just put them in flags. Let's play flag football. All right, here's flag football. Well, why would I watch flag football with the best? It's like you can't win for trying in these cases. And so we've lost the plot trying to make it an entertaining television event when really, as a sports fan, you just want to see something that looks like an actual game that you are used to watching. It's okay if all-star games aren't that great anymore. It's a sign of the times. It's a change of the times. We can just appreciate what we watch, even if it's not exactly the intensity of an NBA Finals matchup.
Yeah, oversaturation is what we got. Like, even growing up in like the 80s and 90s, like you would watch, let's just say, the Philadelphia Eagles, which sometimes were blacked out in their own markets if they weren't sold out, which is so crazy to think about how TV actually plays a part of this. But you just have to watch like NFL primetime on ESPN at night just to see the highlights from across the league. Now, you see them instantly on your phone the minute they happen. So who needs a recap show at the end of the NFL Sunday? You saw everything multiple times. And you do outlive it. Like, there's ways you can tweak it, but all-star games aren't needed. It used to be even back in the day, like, hey, we got to create an extra date for TV because we got to get the revenue up across the league. And the players like, hey, you know, I made $150,000 for my season. Whoa, look at my bump, $15,000 to be an all-star. I can't wait to get there. Sure. Money doesn't matter to these guys. So even when they say, like, hey, if you gave LeBron James $5 million to do the dunk competition, you'd be like, why do I do that? Like, I make $5 million a day, basically, with all my businesses across the world and my salaries. Yeah. Why do I have to go out there? And if I lose to Mac McClung, boy, what's that going to put on my branding? That's why guys don't want to try at this point, because in the past, you'd be like, yeah, like Dr. J would do the dunk competition because you get an extra $50,000, which was basically, you know, probably a third of his salary for the season back in the 1970s in the ABA. It's just a different time right now where we're searching for answers. But the always answer we come down to is, would anybody be mad if we never saw any all-star game away again and we just played the regular season? Not like tonight. Hey, what are we doing in the NBA? You know, it'd be great. 7 NBA games tonight instead of all-star weekend. Come on.
And we'll see what the viewership is for All-Star Sunday night and what that means. There was a lot happening over the weekend. Last night, a lot of television events underway. So we'll see in what the NBA decides to do. There was also the weirdness of LeBron at his press conference being like, what can we expect to see from you tonight in the All-Star game? And he's like, oh, you're not going to see anything. I'm not playing, ending his 20-year run of playing in All-Star games. There was the weirdness around Anthony Edwards' scratch, which we did not learn during the actual broadcast itself, and not till after the game that he was dealing with a groin issue. It's like load management in the All-Star game. Have we lost the plot? I don't know, man. All-Star Saturday night was kind of fun. Yeah, Mac McClung's not exactly an NBA superstar, but we all recognize that he gives it a go each and every time he's out there for the dunk contest. He was a -175 favorite at close, and he wins the dunk contest for a third consecutive year. The first three-peat dunk contest winner since Nate Robinson, who was the first to ever do it in 2006, 09, and 2010. Mac McClung, perfect 50s on all 4 dunks. The first time that has ever happened as well.
Now, was it close? Because, again, following through on social media and just, like, watching the Mac McClung dunks, did anybody else put on a show or a challenge? Was like, ooh, McClung got lucky this year? Or was it just a runaway where you said, I think you said, what, every dunk was perfect that he made? He got 50s?
I think it was 199.6 as I see the final tally provided by our stat man and producer, Joe Frizo, against Steph Castle in the final. So, yeah, pretty close. But Mac McClung takes it home for a third straight year.
Now, how much did he win? How much money did he win? Do we know that? Like, I keep saying like the things like Mac McClung makes like $100,000 a year, and like his total dunk competition winnings are $300,000. Like, they're not even getting $1 million to win this thing. Like, what happened to that? That's terrible.
105,000
like $100,000 to win it. Like, that's ridiculous. Yes.
I mean, Mac McClung, who has played in one NBA game this year for the Orlando Magic, mostly plays in the G League for the Osceola Magic. My apologies, by the way. I've been saying first three-peat champ since Nate Robinson. That's not true. First guy to win it 3 years or 3 times to win the NBA dunk contest since Nate Robinson. My apologies to Mac McClung and Nate Robinson. 3-point contest. Dame was trying to win it 3 consecutive years. Tyler Hero steps in at a 5-1 price. Donnie nailed it in the skills challenge. Team Cavs, despite the Spurs trying to skirt the rules, I said Team C, Chris Mullin, would get the job done, and they did. More on the early line next.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
You want me to solve all this tush-push and fourth down malarkey that goes on with the officials? Here's a crazy idea. Get rid of the worst rule in the NFL, and that is forward progress. How about this? Where I knock your ass in the ground is where the ball goes, period. Let's end this whole conversation. Like, if I drop you back 4 yards, then you lost 4 yards. If we get rid of forward progress, this tush-push and everything else is taken care of. Where I put your tail on the ground is where the ball goes. End of conversation. It's the dumbest rule and the most arbitrary rule. The only thing that is a worse call in the NFL than forward progress is the punt that goes out of bounds when you watch the official walk down the sideline having absolutely no clue where that ball crossed over. All I can think of is that Price is Right game go do-de-do-de-do, do-de-do-de-do, as he's walking down the sideline, arbitrarily trying to figure out where the ball crossed over because he's got no clue.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the early line on SportsGrid. Real basketball in just a moment from a weekend around college hoops. But quickly, DRS, a man who always says if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, had to be happy to see Team Spurs, Victor Wembanyama and Chris Paul, take so much care into the skills challenge. They were trying to circumvent the rules and regulations, if you will. But DRS got DQ'd. Has anybody ever been disqualified from a skills challenge during an All-Star weekend ever? Chris Paul and Wemby were on Saturday. What did you make of it?
I loved it because it was sort of a shock to All-Star Weekend where two players were trying to embarrass but still trying to win at the same time. And the fact that the NBA got upset, and then from what I was hearing is getting disqualified and not allowed to be interviewed at that point to sort of explain themselves. But when you watch it out, they're like, the deviousness in me was like, this is absolutely sensational. Like, their only goal is I don't even want to compete in this. I just want to win this year and get out of it when it's supposed to be fan-friendly and fun in the skills competition where all they were looking to do was win. So it's almost like that 50-50 look at it. And I sort of tilt myself on the scales to go, I appreciate guys trying to skirt the system to pick up a win and see if the NBA is man enough to call them out on it. And they did. So it embarrassed the league per se, but I gained a lot more respect for Victor Wembanyama saying, you know what? This guy can actually be something here. He has the will to win at all costs, something I need to look forward to over his next 15 years in the NBA.
And one of the things was DRS, when whatever NBA rules official came by and was like, hey, you can see here in the bylaws that you have done this and broken something, some sort or another. Like, Wemby was upset. Wemby was generally like, oh, man, like, we got caught red-handed. That's really unfortunate. I thought we were playing by the rules. So, yeah, there was certainly some buy-in there. We'll have more from All-Star Weekend. I understand maybe you out there watching and listening don't care all that much. We'll hear about it a little bit later on. Let's get to actual basketball. Under 4 weeks away from Selection Sunday. 3 weeks and 6 days to be exact. So each and every day, each and every weekend around college basketball, that added significance in conference title races in the regular season, for playoff or postseason positioning in conference tournaments, trying to win the automatic qualifier to the NCAA tourney and the big dance. DRS, at the mid-major level, most leagues have about 4 or 5 games remaining in the regular season before we get to conference tournaments, which is a great time. Let's go to the high major level, though. In the top of the top, our first 1 versus 2 matchup in men's college basketball since November of 2021. The first 1v2 in SEC men's basketball history on Saturday in Tuscaloosa between number 1 Auburn and number 2 Alabama. If you needed any more intensity in a rivalry game, the Iron Basketball, you had that on Saturday. Also 2 teams battling for the top spot within the SEC. In Auburn, shows why they are the number 1 team in the nation with a 94-85 victory over the Tide in Tuscaloosa. The Tigers, an underdog, winning outright as a 1.5-point dog against Alabama. Already a lofty total of 174.5 does sky over as well.
Yeah, I loved it. It was a great game. The anticipation, the SEC 1 versus 2, same state here, supremacy, bragging rights, and the away team got the best of them because why? They were the better basketball team on that Saturday. Now, the best part about it is I think it was scheduled. Did they already play once this year, Ben, or is this their first game that they played? Was it the first one?
Game they end the regular season against one another on the Plains.
Exactly. So what I heard, which I thought was even fascinating, like, hey, get ready. This is 1 versus 2, but this could be one of possible 4 matchups between these two if things go right, which means they're going to play in the regular season. You hope that they play in the SEC tournament, and then if they get on the opposite side of the brackets, it could be a perfect storm, or even if they're in the same bracket, could play each other a 4 straight time. Love to see that. It's not like a one and done. We won't see it again. We could see this 4 more times over what, Ben? The next 5 total weeks, which would be awesome to let it play out. But also, let me ask you this question, too. Did I see this right? Because you know me, and I get upset in college football season where we have that fake show that shows where these teams are ranked when it means absolutely nothing with weeks left to play. We actually had a similar bracketology show that showed where these play. Did you watch that? What's the need? College, some of these teams got 8 or 9 games left in their season and the conference tournament and Selection Sunday. Why do we need this?
It's a sneak peek, if you will, to understand the committee's thoughts on how they are seeing the college basketball season. It is a made-for-television event, DRS, where Bubba Cunningham, who's the AD at North Carolina, literally came on and said, a lot of basketball left to be played. And Bubba is correct. But it gives you an early preview of what the selection committee is looking at. And there's a couple of notable things, like, for instance, A&M was the 6th overall seed on the 2 line. It goes to show the committee values Texas A&M's large wins this year, both in non-conference play and in the SEC. I think it speaks to the strength of the SEC as well. 3 of the 4 1 seeds were from the Southeastern Conference, including Auburn and Alabama, entering Saturday as the top 2 overall seeds in the bracket, if you will. Duke, the only other team not from the SEC to earn a 1 seed. Florida, the 4th and final team on the 1 line. DRS, from the actual game that we saw inside Coleman Coliseum on Saturday, what a performance by Auburn. And I think it shows the depth of this Auburn team. 3 guys off the bench, and Bruce Pearl has the luxury of playing guys that would start basically anywhere else off the bench. Chaney Johnson, Chad Baker-Mazara, who's one of the emotional leaders of this Auburn team, and Tahad Pettiford, that basically every time he is on the floor, he is making the correct decision. All guys scoring at least 13 points off the bench. And then you have Janai Broome, 19, 14, and 6, showing why he is in consideration to win the Wooden Award this year.
Yeah, and it always used to, like, and again, in college basketball throughout history, like, you usually have that top dog here. You lose your top dog, you're probably not going to win a championship. Now, granted, if Broome goes down, probably winning a national championship might be off there. But the fact that you have so many players that can step up in big moments, like, Ben, this wasn't a, hey, we're going to play Radford in December, and boy, did you see 3 guys off the bench get double digits. You're talking about the number 2 team. You're playing in their own building where that crowd was ready for anything, and that comeback in the second half had everybody on the tips of their toes, and still you're able to get through that. I loved what I saw at Auburn, and if you're talking about depth, that's what the NCAA tournament is about. How many times you turn on a game and, oh no, our starters are in foul trouble. 3 guys off the bench with double digits? Come on now.
The updated outlook in the SEC next.
At some point, these ADs are going to learn we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience who's gone out and recruited, who knows how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams. Who's got the best goaltending? You're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
So just to speak a little bit more about the mettle of this year's Auburn Tigers team, led by Bruce Pearl, more than likely going to be the number 1 overall seed 3 weeks from right now, or a little bit less than 4 weeks from right now when Selection Sunday comes around and the NCAA tournament bracket is unveiled. DRS, Auburn has been an underdog 3 times this year, all 3 times on the road. Early on in non-conference play against Houston, the Tigers won outright. On the road in non-conference action against Duke inside Cameron Indoor. That one of 2 losses the Tigers have suffered this season. And on Saturday, in the first 1 versus 2 matchup in the history of SEC men's hoops, the Tigers win outright, as you saw, in Tuscaloosa. Auburn now a minus 700 favorite to win the SEC title. Saturday's game not just important for the history that was on the line, but also just the stakes of that rivalry basketball game. Auburn now 11-1 in the SEC, full game advantage over Alabama before these 2 teams end out the regular season against one another on the Plains. But you can see there the Tigers a hefty favorite to win the SEC, in minus money to reach the Final Four, and now the shortest price by themselves at a 3-1 number to cut down the nets in early April in San Antonio as a national champion.
It's awesome. And these two teams will certainly do well. And based on injuries and just mediocre shooting performances, should be able to get them through against some of the lower seeded teams that they're going to face. But it is crazy to see like the SEC title, minus 700 in that graphic going up for Auburn. And it's like, well, yeah, the only two good teams in the SEC are Alabama and Auburn. They have a step on. I'm like, no, like the third ranked team, fourth ranked team / is Florida. And then you go right behind in Tennessee at this point. So like you're going to play good teams all the way throughout. And it's like, I think, Ben, what is it? They have 6 games left, I guess, in conference play for those. Because I remember looking at maybe over the weekend, some teams had like 7 or 8 games left. So it's not as if like, hey, Auburn can't lose a few games here down the stretch in SEC level competition to see that minus 700. But it just shows the respect, as we were talking about with Auburn. It's not a one-man show on Auburn. So many different ways to beat in pedigree, and going into the number 2 team's building in state with a monster matchup. Did you know they scored combined 104 points in the second half of that basketball game? It was awesome to watch. It was theater all the way through, but Auburn looks like they are going to be kings of the SEC, at least for the regular season.
Keep an eye on the Crimson Tide as well, DRS. Again, in that bracket preview, on the 1 line as the number 2 overall team in the NCAA tournament field of 68. Other scores from the weekend. Sunday, inside Madison Square Garden, huge game in the Big East. St. John's holds off Creighton 79-73. CU does cover by the hook as a 6.5-point road underdog, but a huge victory for the Red Storm, DRS. Now a 2-game lead for Rick Pitino and the Johnnies atop the Big East, trying to win their first regular season conference crown since the 1991-92 season, over 3 decades ago, the final year that Louie, the late great Lou Carnesecca, was the head coach up in Queens.
Grimy. That's what St. John's is, man. This is old school Big East basketball. It's not pretty ball. You have 79-73. It's okay. How did they win this game? How about shooting 38% as a team from the floor? That should get you beat against a top 25 team. How about 33% from three-point range? That should get you beat. How about making less than 60% of your free throws in a close game? That should get you beat. This team just keeps finding ways to win, which you love, because once you get to the NCAA tournament, Ben, you know there's no home court advantage anymore at this point. You're on the road in environments that are tough to shoot in and places you're not used to playing in. You know how you win? Play defense, play close ball games, and understand what it takes to win. 13-2 now in the Big East for St. John's, 22-4 overall. I love wins like that because ugly victories need to happen in March, and that looks like that's what's going to take place here for the St. John's squad.
And if you are Rick Pitino and you look at the way your team played, you need your leaders in this significant of a game to step up. R.J. Lewis, 23 points, 14 rebounds, 5 dimes. Zuby Ejiofor, 18 points, 9 rebounds, 5 dimes. And the guy who is always a walking double-double, Kadari Richmond, 19 points, 10 boards, 3 dimes, and 4 steals. The leader at the point guard spot, the most significant players for the Johnnies stepping up on a very significant Sunday at home against Creighton. It was a really big game because the Blue Jays won the opening matchup of this year by a single point in Omaha. Had Creighton won yesterday inside the Garden, they would have taken control of the Big East standings, would have been the same record, but that tiebreaker advantage would have been all for CU. So a big victory for St. John's. The other scores from the weekend, you see them on your screen, but we'll talk about them and what they mean in terms of those national title prices when hour number 2 comes your way on the other side of the break.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.